So it seems I spoke a lot yesterday, and there weren't many questions. And I remember from sitting in those seats rather than this seat, that there are always questions. And they don't, so I'm going to try and not fill all the space today. Or it just happens as it happens, of course, but I was aware that there wasn't much space yesterday. So if you're, hopefully if there's uncomfortable silences, then some of you will feel compelled to break that discomfort with asking the nagging question that either, yeah, it's a silly question, but...
Could you talk a little bit about jealousy?
Well, yeah, I could talk about that. One of the myths, there are many, about what would life be like without me? And all of that is mythical. All of it is imagined. There is no me to have a life without me, who can then compare it with life as it was when I was here. And one of the great myths about what freedom or liberation, enlightenment, awakening, whatever word you prefer, one of the myths is that there will be freedom from uncomfortable feelings that I don't want to have, the ones I don't like. And especially the ones that we've been conditioned to say are the negative feelings, the ones you shouldn't really have. And jealousy is one of those. Envy is another. Anger, of course. There aren't many of us who grew up in a family where anger was openly accepted as natural human behavior, as no more wrong than joy or compassion or, all the positive ones. It may be nice for you to hear, it may be liberating to hear that, of course, this isn't freedom from any of those negative emotions. You could say that without me and my judgment of them, because really that's what self is that sense of judgment. Because they're mine, I judge them so harshly because then I judge myself, because I know I shouldn't feel jealous. The very sense of me is that I shouldn't feel jealous. I shouldn't feel envy. I see the guy next door and he's got the car, and it's just the car I've been fantasizing about. And I just want to punch him straight in the face. And I feel really bad about that. Self feels, well, obviously I'm not a good person. If liberation means anything, it's liberation for all those parts of what you call yourself, including those feelings, that they are neither right nor wrong. They're absolutely natural. It's not you having them. They never belong to you. Jealousy, envy, anger, lust. I'm just thinking of all the deadly sins. Greed, avarice. I'm going back to Sunday school now. Because most of us were brought up Christian, but it's not about religion, really. The whole sense of self is that there are parts of me that are wrong. There are things that happen that feel that they are part of me that are wrong, and I need to do something about them. That's what dies. And so there is liberation for jealousy, for envy, for anger, for desire. Sorry, missed out the key one. I mean, desire is the one, really. If I'm if I'm righteous, holy, spiritual, then of course most world faiths talk about, if not the absence of desire, then certainly the reduction in desire. When desire is the most human, it's what is being human if it's not desire? Where is all the juice of life? Where is all the being human? It's desire, and desire is love. What self says is that if desires were freely, if I didn't control desires, this is the illusion, then there would be utter mayhem. I would become a monster, freely allowing free rein to my desires. Well, there is no me that is controlling desire. There is no me to give free rein to my desires. Desire is not yours. It doesn't belong. It freely appears. Doesn't it? Unbidden. You don't know where. I mean, it can be shocking. Bloody hell. I really want that. I don't even know. I don't really want it. I don't even know why I want that. Where's that come from? Well, that's reality. We don't know where anything comes from. This always just appears from nowhere as whatever it appears to be. So liberation for all the things that you have said, are probably still saying, are wrong with you, that need repressing, suppressing, controlling, managing, eradicating, the dark bits that you really try and hide even from yourself. It's liberation for those. They were never wrong. You were never wrong because they don't belong. You can't do that. That's the problem with this. I mean, this is the downside of this whole message. So it's saying, okay, so I just allow my dark feelings. The one I just allow them to be. Will you? Hell no. It's allowing them to be is more of the same shit. It's more of the same illusion that I'm managing this that I call my life. And the wonderful news is you already are not controlling, managing, in charge, running the show, just the show. And the show appears just as it appears. That's it.
Tim, I like to, when we're talking about jealousy and wanting things, I like to compare to my dog and to dogs.
It's a good comparison,
because most people dogs don't have an ego, they don't. And my dog, he gets so jealous if I am cuddling with another dog. He gets angry.
Yeah, he would.
He attacks the other dog.
Yeah.
So it's so natural to be jealous.
Mm.
And it's so natural, but of course, the dog, he doesn't feel any, I shouldn't do that.
No.
I shouldn't attack that.
No. He's perfectly content with his jealousy. Yeah, so human dogs. This is very much, the whole story that humanity is superior, that really dies with me. Everything is absolutely equal. There may still be a greater love and compassion for human beings, but probably not just as much compassion for a dog as a human being. This idea that we're higher, we're at the top of the tree. We wrote that story, of course, didn't we? Who wrote the story of humans being the pinnacle of creation? Well, I did. I wrote that. And I tell that story to small children, and I teach them that so that they feel superior. The specialness. God. Because I essentially am the notion of God, of specialness. Human beings are no more special than blades of grass or drops of rain. But because what you've called yourself is human, of course there is a love for other human beings that does feel different because they are like what you are. Essentially exactly the same. Being human. That's what we're speaking about. So what are you left with without me? If it's not me being human, what are you left with? Well, being human. What's that? Well, you don't need to know. It's just being what you are. It's just not yours. You don't need to know anything. You don't need to understand what it is to be human. To be. It's terribly obvious. But the fear, I mean, the dread is that this illusion of control that you call yourself will not give it up. I don't know this, but I have a sense that all spiritual paths of surrender and acceptance, which are, they're rife across all of humanity. And if you look throughout time, they've been rife. So self doesn't like being selfish. I'd love to be. I don't like this sense of just being locked inside, this sense of imprisonment I have. So I want to be expansive, and part of the way I can do that is surrender. But surrender is just more control. I'm now controlling my surrendering. I'm managing my life in that way rather than getting, I'm letting go. So all of, and then I self loves it. How lofty, how superior, how much more holy do I feel that I'm spiritual? And look at those poor material wretches still going for a McDonald's on a Friday night and saving up for another car. And I look down my nose at that. It's spiritual materialism. Losing, the whole notion of losing, of letting go, is exactly the same game as gaining. If you see that, it's really funny, but you can never take it seriously ever again. If it is seen, you can never really pretend anymore. And whatever paths you've been on, they're just redundant. You can't invest in them anymore. There can't be any investment. And the wonderful news, of course, this doesn't require any investment. There's never more or less of this. You can't lose anything that is or gain it. This is the entirety. This is all. I mean, all. It's such I mean, it just smashes everything. Everything is obliterated. It doesn't smash it because there's nothing to smash. You don't even get a chance to smash things, to lose. There's nothing to lose. So you look at what you might lose in order to be free, and there's nothing. There's nothing to hold. There's nothing. You can't pick anything up and throw it and smash it. And you might cry and think the tears will never stop for how hard you've tried. And it was all pointless. There was never anything to lose. Well, as I've said, self will not give this up. And really, if I was going to teach you a method, a path, always makes me laugh, is complete exhaustion, as you said, exhaustion. I'm done. Well, the thing is, see, what self does is, so there is a seeming allowing. Well, that's not your allowing. If there is seeming allowing, there's seeming allowing. That's what's happening. But of course, me will claim every fucking thing. So I claim surrendering. I claim, just as I claim working hard in order and earning the money, my money, and then I claim what I've bought as mine. But my surrender, of course, I can hold in much higher esteem than my car. Oh, just a material possession. How shallow. I'm much deeper than that. I'm now on a path of surrender. And self loves that shit. God, you've met some souls who love that shit. I have. And they're hard to be with, those. The pious, I would much rather be with drunks swearing in a pub, smoking weed, and than I would with the pious and their lofty spirituality. I mean, there is only this, so I'd rather be in the pub than in church. I did think, there's this. We talked yesterday about silence, and there's so many myths around that silence is superior. That's the truth. I mean, what a story.
And in the same way, it's very common to say that suffering is the way to go. But just as suffering changes you, also success and fortune really changes a human being.
Yeah.
Much calmer, much kinder. Just give me 10 million.
Yeah,
and it really changes you.
Yeah.
And you get enlightened in the end. But it's so easy to try to find a method.
Yeah, of course. That's really. I just want it. I want something other than this.
But I think in so many spiritual circles, it's all about suffering. Purification, just you have to go through a period of despair.
Yeah.
That's...
Well...
you have to have that to get this.
Well, the thing is, I mean, that kind of makes sense, because for most, if you listen to most stories, of course, they are stories of despair.
But not everyone.
Not everyone.
Somebody is just walking through the park, everything is working and fine. Yeah, isn't that the case?
I don't know.
Yeah.
All we have is other you're listening to me thinking I've got pearls of wisdom. I haven't, and no one has. No one knows more about this than anyone else. I mean, that's the great liberation. That's the freedom. You will never listen to another human being and think that they've got something, or they know something, or they understand something that you don't. I think that's what I want to share more than anything. That's what wants to be. I want to tell everyone that. I mean, it won't be heard by many, but that's what feels the most loving. Because I know for most of you, your life, you felt shit about yourself with moments of okayness. I'm talking about myself there, of course. But that's how it is to be me, isn't it? Most of the time striving, most of the time trying really hard, holding all this shit together. What a job. Self is always fully employed. And this is a redundancy package. Well, it's complete dismissal. It's not a redundancy, there's no package. You're just dismissed. And you're out of work, out of a job. And if you do find that you're out of a job, the job of being me and my life and making it work, you won't know what the fuck to do. It's not some nirvana. It's not Sat Chitananda. No. Sat Shitananda, more like. This is liberation for all the stuff that the shit of life. That's what feels most liberated. Everything you've pushed away about your life. Everything you've tried to hide from, run from, polish up, kill. It's liberation for especially those feelings, the most human feelings, especially sadness. Being human is essentially sad. And the thing I've got, I do kind of still have a mission, which is to liberate sadness as love. Because we're so conditioned from an early age that sadness is wrong. Whereas sadness is, I'm sure you've all felt it, that grief and sadness is the most obvious expression of love as a human being. When have you felt most love? When somebody who's beloved has died and you'll never hold them again. This is not this is the opposite of escaping from that which you fear. And most souls fear sadness, grief, loss more intensely than anything else. And this is the impossibility of ever denying, escaping, hiding from the nature of life. So that's not what you want. So when I said yesterday, this is not what you want, that will be one of the main reasons.
Tim, I can't help feeling that what you were saying about silence and what Aspect was saying about suffering, that sort of, to me, that's dependent on your character a bit. Because when Ambrit was saying about her understanding of suffering as a sort of refinement, when you said, I completely get it, the sort of the Trappist approach to life. No, there's no virtue in keeping your mouth shut and hating your brother monks and not being allowed to. There's nothing good about that. But you know, some of the moments in which one can be most moved when in an environment of silence you actually get to hear a small sound which you would never hear if you were in a noisy environment. Yeah. But at the same time, I think that there's as much joy to be had in a sort of evangelical church where there's tons of noise
Yeah.
and celebration. So to me, really, there's no bounds to the rules here.
No.
And that within the no thing that's everything, everybody's experience and the things that they've, all of that's cool. I mean, if this is how that this felt valuable to Ann-Britt,
Yeah.
it felt valuable. That was great. If this is the way Aslak sort of feels about money liberating him, well, okay, I can think of lots of millionaires. I'm not a millionaire. I never will be. But I can think of sort of your Trumps who apparently have money, although of course they're actually vastly in debt, who are incredibly unliberated and totally insecure.
Yeah.
So for every affirmation we make, there's an exception.
Absolutely.
And I think that the sort of all-embracingness of the no thing that's everything, it's sort of, when you were saying about preferring being in a pub than in a church, I think, I can see, I mean, I've been in churches and I've felt really moved.
Me too.
I've also been in churches and I felt totally cold. So, and my experiences in pubs are equally varied. So I think it sort of depends on our character.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Well, the wonder of this nothing is that the sameness and difference are not two. So human beings are essentially the same. Being human has. We can speak to other human beings, and you can have a sense of the essential sameness that it is to be human, and yet every human being is utterly unique. What we're not speaking about the loss of uniqueness. Every human being's experience and memory and character, and you don't have to know anything about it. The uniqueness is obvious. It's just it just doesn't belong to you or me. That's all. The uniqueness is more obvious, and the sameness is more obvious without me and you. So everyone, all human beings are more obviously the same and more obviously unique without my relationship, my distance between. Because there is no space between. There's no space between me and you. I mean, that's the pain of separation. That's what me says. I am absolutely separate. I'm completely cut off from all others. And so what do I desire most? I desire connection more than everything. I desire to be connected to another. And the great paradox is that without the possibility of connection, because there isn't two of us to connect, without that desperate need, there is no space between at all. There's no possibility. So the impossibility of connectivity, of connecting and being at one with another, that's just a fantasy. If that is obviously a fantasy, then there isn't two of us without one of us. There's only two because I'm one. Annabelle.
To me, silence is much more than the lack of words or sounds. It is something that comes from inside when the I, not the personal I, but the idea of an I, fades away. And if, for example, on some occasions, if I walk down a road or take a bicycle ride, it is as if it opens up, so there's an additional dimension to what I'm seeing. And while it's happening, it's like, what? Because I wouldn't say it is shining, But it's more than just three-dimensional. There's an additional quality which is amazing. And if I start thinking, it disappears. It is as if the world is blessed in ways that I can barely be with. And it's so precious when it happens. So to me, it is more and more leaning into that silence. It isn't a silence that can be done. Either it comes by itself or it doesn't. I cannot do it, and if I try, there's no way it happens.
No.
But when there's silence and take a walk or watch a tree or whatever, it is incredibly precious and blissful. I had an experience 8 or 9 years ago. I came out from a food operation and stood with the crutches and looked down long alley with trees on both sides and the leaves were falling, and it was like, and it lasted for 3 months and then it disappeared.
It lasted for 3 months? I thought you were going to say 3 seconds. Yeah, you can't allow it, as you just said. No, there is only silence. You know, you said you'd go back to that state. Well, the silence isn't a state.
Can be created.
Silence this is silent and unmoving. So the words emptiness, nothing, no thing, silence are futile attempts to speak of what can't be spoken of. That's all that non-duality. And what is that? That's this. This is silent. This is unmoving. This is unchanging. And the changing and the moving and the noise is silent and still and unmoving. So the illusion is that silence is the absence of sound. Of course it's not. The silence is the sounds. The sounds are silent.
What I think is very special is when it happens, you can look down a small plant that comes up of the earth or whatever, and it's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen, and it's so precious, whatever be it, grass or whatever, it's like, wow.
Yeah. But that's everything.
I had that experience while I was on a rock concert, and the most beautiful moment was when the guitarist he smashed his guitar against the fence, and I just felt so when he smashed that, it was like just everything disappeared.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's quite opposite.
Well, it's quite what John just said. Depending upon the character, one may find Satchit Ananda in the smashing of a guitar at a rock concert, or in the wonder of a flower.
But still,
and there's no difference. All difference is the same. That's the wonder. This has nothing to do, what we're speaking of is not in a particular state, in a particular experience. The whole illusion is that there are special states, there are special events, there are special moments, there are special things. Well, whether there is a sense of there is an I that experiences or not is of no relevance at all. Your insignificance is what we are speaking of. More than insignificance, non-existence, is all we're speaking of. And then what is life? Is as it is. That's it. Beyond simple, pointless. So what's the point of speaking about it? Well, haven't you suffered enough at the hands of yourself? That's the compassion of speaking about this. Are you not sick and tired of all your efforts to get somewhere when you know full well, intuitively, you don't You try and deny it, but it's undeniable. You haven't moved a fucking inch. How far have you got in your quest? Other than your story that you can tell of, well, there was this experience, and it seems like they're more, I get that more often now. Yeah, of course, that's the fuel. The story is the fuel, and the story is real as a story, but no more. You are no more than your story.
I always struggle with the word effort, because in some way, trying to remove effort is effort.
Absolutely, yeah.
But there's also this exhausting that doesn't happen without effort coming to a point where there's no reason for effort, but this before, stopping effort before, and I'm in a strange stage where effort is something that I try not to get entangled in, but allows happening because it starts happening.
Oh no, effort's completely natural, but not when I'm doing it. It's so true, isn't it? No, of course. So people say, well, everything just flows effortlessly. I mean, you've been reading more spiritual shit books, haven't you? Your life just flows in endless peace and compassion for all beings. No, you get angry, there's anger, everything just appears. And there is trying, because I play golf still. I love golf. And they're going, who's playing golf? I mean, you don't need you to play golf. It's just playing golf. And what about being competitive? I went, if anything, much more competitive than I was as me. Because I don't have the fear of losing that I had. Do I like losing? No. I can get pissed and throw the club, and it's great to feel completely free to do that. Swear at your opponent for hitting a great shot. Really ungracious and ungenerous, and not care. Jealous. Yeah, he's got some new clubs. They're the clubs I wanted. Yeah, that kind of thing. But yeah, I mean, it's just the claiming stops, so effort is natural. But it's got a different flavour. Effort, there's no knowing, trying. It's just effort, naturally. Whatever, if you're doing a job. If you're doing a task, and effort's natural.
That makes more sense than this. There is no effort.
No,
there's no me doing the effort. That makes sense.
Yeah, it's nonsense, no effort.
Yeah.
You wouldn't get out of bed.
I wouldn't.
I will say that there is more staying in bed. Because there's no shame. I mean, I was always ashamed of how lazy I was. I was always pretending. One of the great pretenses I had as a self was that I wasn't as lazy as I really was. We're mammals. What do the mammals you see, what do they do most of the day? They really only do three things. They sleep or lie about, just loll about, don't they? Cats, good example. Fucking how lazy are cats? So cats do 3 or 4 things. They laze about and sleep. They eat, and and they fight, and they fuck. And that's about it. And we have made this elaborate story, because we're far too clever for our own good. We've made up this stories of higher and lower. of right and wrong. The death of right and wrong is the liberation, really. I am the judge of right and wrong. I am the judge of righteousness. This sense of me. I know what's right and wrong. This sense of morality. The death of morality other than what you might call a natural morality. The morality a cat would have. You're not required for that.
It's the Norwegian character that just happily interrupts you.
Yeah.
And it's the Danish and English character that sort of goes like this. First of all, just a little observation. I suppose that we see cats lazing during the day, so that's because the poor things are out all night doing whatever cats do.
Well, they're doing the other two things.
Okay. Yes, all right,
We
okay.
we only see them lazing about because they're up all night doing the other two things. Yeah.
I wanted to go back to the question of jealousy and the idea what you mentioned about sort of releasing the hellhounds, the 7 deadly sins, so that they run amok. The only thing I would imagine about, I think that possibly if jealousy is understood as possessiveness, when you were describing then that sense, I mean, obviously there's no sense of separation, then there's no possibility of losing the other person. And so the sense of possession doesn't really make sense. So I would imagine that once it is understood that there is no self to possess, then I would imagine jealousy could diminish. I wouldn't think envy would diminish, because I can you see those new golf clubs and I think
It's just desire.
What would it be like to have a set?
Yeah.
Or what would it be like to have a car like that? Or whatever. But I would think that jealousy could
You
diminish.
would think that, wouldn't you?
Yeah, and I'm wrong, am I?
Well, I can't say you're wrong. No, I can't say you're wrong, but that's not the experience here. No, not at all. I would say it's more, if anything, it's more, but it doesn't matter. And so that's hard to convey. So the jealousy is more obvious, but it's perfectly okay. Now that is indescribably different. So when I say it's exactly the same, perhaps more intense because it's not being repressed, but when there's no judgment of it as wrong, it's not being held or pushed away, then there's an okayness. I use the word okayness quite a bit. Maybe I used to use it a lot more, but there is an okayness with everything that is it's very different to how it felt being me. Like they're everything, and I do mean everything, and this is the most difficult part to talk about. I mean the most abhorrent, what I really find disgusting, abhorrent, dreadful, disgusting. I mean acts of atrocities. What I would have called evil has an okayness that is unthinkable to self. It was unthinkable to me. That doesn't, in no way is it condoning, terrible acts. It's not that, but everything is just as it is. And when that can't be denied, everything is okay. And that's never acceptable to me. This whole message is not acceptable to me because I'm not in it. There's no place for me. There is no place for me here because I need time. It's dreadful if it comes as an obvious realization that what I've called my life is just the story that I tell myself. That is it. And what others tell me of my story. Others tell you your story as well and confirm it. But other than that, that's it. And then there is this felt sense, of course, of being inside that I do, of being confined to this body, of being separate. That is bodily felt as well. I mean, it's not just the story, but those two things together, if it's just obvious, oh yeah, that is all I am. And then if that bodily felt sense no longer turns up, then there is just the story. And it's just a story. And there's no story to be told about this. That's why you've heard it said lots of times that this can't be spoken. This is storytelling that's being done here, when all communication is that. But this can't be spoken of because there's no time. Stories need time. About that if you want. So that was where I had an awakening experience. Whatever we're calling those, you know.
When you were
The revelation, a revelatory experience, which of course I've made incredibly special, as we're prone to do. And so I kept going back to try and get it again, have it again. Surprise, surprise, that doesn't work. Of course, because it didn't happen. I only have the memory of it. And I don't have that. There is just the memory of it.
And those stories are quite dangerous for a seeker, I think.
Well, that is the fuel, you know.
Yeah, because you're waiting for that experience in the park or in the wood or...
Yeah.
And I heard stories that they don't have any special experience. It's just
Well,
it's not like a big bang.
yeah, so I had this incredible experience of oneness, you could say, of non-separation, experientially, mind-blowing, literally. And of course you want it again, so that really is the search. If you've had an experience like that, then you can't help but want it again. But there is no again. That's the dreadful news. This doesn't happen again. Just this. Yeah, there's two kinds of seeking, really, that me does. One is to rediscover, find again what I had before, what seemed to be had and then lost. And then there's the pure imagination search of what I've imagined life could be. Pure fantasy. So there's those two elements to seeking, really. I'm either looking for what I seemingly had and then lost, to go back home. I was home once. I found home, and then I lost home. And now I'm longing to go back home again. Or I've not had that, but I've heard tell of it, of this place where there's just peace and rest and bliss or whatever other pure fantasy. I've heard tell, and then I've adopted that as my quest. But they're the same, really. They're all impossible. This is a message of impossibility, which feels devastating for me, because I live in possibilities. The whole sense of self is what may be possible. Well, nothing's possible. There's just this. This is the only possibility. And it's not a possibility. It's complete and whole. It's already all possibilities and no possibility at all. That's why it feels like death. It can feel like dying, because what dies are dreams and hopes. And I don't want my dreams to die. Self doesn't want that. That's where I've lived, in an imagined future where I could be complete and whole and okay. And I can't imagine it. You know, this can't be thought of, because the thinking of it is it. I can't imagine it. The imagination of it is what's happening. If it's happening, there is nothing. So the devastation, why it can feel devastating, because it is. It's the devastation of everything that you've held most dear. And what you've held most dear, what self tends to hold most dear, is possibility. What might be, what might become, what could happen. And without that, I mean, you just don't know what you're left with or what's left. But it is incredible. It's simply all there is. It's not somewhere else. It never was somewhere else. It never will be somewhere else. There is no was and will be. And you can't find this isness, this what is. It's not that I've found that or that it has been found, because it can't be lost. The whole story that you've told is that I had it once and I've lost it. And so it could be regained. It's seemingly, well, you could say that's what I am. I am is the veil. Seemingly. You know, there's no veil. In my awakening story, when I told it to myself, what the hell happened there, I'd read a few stories of, I'd read the stories of the veil being lifted, and then reality revealed. And so that's the story I told, because we can only tell an experiential story in the language that we have. And yeah, but it did feel like that. The curtains were drawn back. I am the curtains, and they were drawn back. And there's simply the absence of me. But because in that experience, it didn't last any time at all. I have no idea. There was no sense of it lasted a second. It was timeless. And most people who speak of awakening experiences, one of the most obvious things is the absence of time, which is the absence of me. It's the same veil. I am time.
I think you mentioned this earlier as well, and I have heard other speakers speak about this, that or it could be that I just heard not accurately, is that they have a change of bodily sensation. And so that is my question really, just because it's very evident to me that I have a whole host of bodily sensations. Yeah. I mean, like, I'm in pain often.
Yeah.
And and that seems to continue.
Yeah. And that's how it seems.
Yeah.
Are you asking, is that how it is?
No, I don't know. I'm just picking up on something you said earlier about, it could be that I just didn't hear correctly, about you said something about the body, not having an experience of the body, and I can resonate with that because it's almost like that. It's like an unbounded experience, but within that there is still a discrete sense of pain, or pain isn't really the right word, but discomfort. Yeah.
Yeah.
Would you say your experience of being in a body has changed though?
I don't have any experience of being in a body. That is the illusory sense of being me.
Yeah.
That I'm inside.
Yeah. But there's still bodily sensations.
Of course, exactly the same.
Yeah, thanks.
Nothing.
Just
No.
to clarify, you know.
And no, the experience of it is not different.
Yeah.
Again, there's no recognition of, oh, it didn't used to feel like this. Pain didn't feel like this, for example. Well, pain feels like pain. Because there is, of course, in the spiritual sense, it's like, well, yeah, there could be pain, but it's not as painful because it's, you know, I've transcended, I'm beyond, and this whole idea that I could be above the pain or outside of the pain. Well, no, there's no. Pain's very real. Pain's just undeniable, isn't it? Everything is undeniable. Experientially, life is undeniable, and what self does is try to deny it, try to manage it, try to manipulate what's happening, what's really happening. What's happening is really happening. It's all that's really happening. It's just another game that self would play in order to manage the pain. More control. And it's not wrong, but you know, that's what me does. So and that might sound like, oh, so I'm okay with the pain. No, of course, there'd be no human being wants pain. No dog wants pain. The dog would be very appreciative if you helped a dog get rid of the pain, as I am. If there's pain, then there will be naturally action to try and alleviate the pain. If I've got a headache, I take paracetamol. Or if it's bad, I take codeine. Yeah.
So I heard that some spiritual teachers is like contraction, that's the ego, that's me.
Mm-hmm.
And then I see inside that whenever there is this contraction, then this thought comes like, oh, now me is here, you know,
Right.
and that there is like a trying to be abundant, you know, trying to not having boundaries, like not sensing the boundaries of the body and just like big, huge space. And I'm like, but contraction, that's also just what is.
Absolutely,
you know, it's not anything to do with an ego, it's just the story we tell ourselves.
No, if that's how it feels, that is how it feels.
Yeah. So it's just contracting, not contracting, open, closing.
Well, there really is no contraction. It feels like that.
So can you elaborate a little bit?
Well, the whole story, you know, of most spiritual seekers is, I'm in and out of being me, or I'm more contracted, less contracted. Sometimes I'm this, sometimes I'm that. Well, there is no you that is ever anything. There is just feelings. And then I tell a story about it and what I might do about it. But there's nothing wrong with any of it. I mean, the sense of contraction, I have there's this, I don't know, but if I'm guessing now, most of that contraction, the energy of it is really fear, because that's the energy of being me is fear. So if I'm now on a path where contraction seems, if I can alleviate this sense of contraction, then I'm on a path towards where I want to get to. There's nothing wrong with contraction, of feeling like me. That's not what this message isn't saying, that me is wrong. It's saying that me is a pain in the ass. That's my message. There's nothing wrong with me. Fuck, I'm a nightmare. I am the creator of my own suffering. Am I not? Because when a human being doesn't like how life is, as a sense of it's my life, I've only got really two choices. I blame myself, and therefore that's what I like, really. I like blaming myself because then I can do something about it. Or I blame God or the universe. I don't like that. I prefer not to do that, but sometimes I feel I have to. Self feels that, because I'm not in control of that. But there are, again, it's depending on the character. Then I go on a path of surrender. You know, I surrender to the higher power. I surrender to the universe, because that's who's responsible. That's the source of my pain and my suffering. So I'll surrender to it. Yeah, go on.
If you've had a non-dual experience, how can you blame the universe? Then there isn't a you. Not two, not one.
Well, when I'm suffering, I'll do anything, won't I? I'll I'll accept any story, because there's a possibility that it could save me.
There's a Danish guy who had an experience of his ego falling away, and he was definitely for quite a while in resistance of it, because it was what was taken away. And he describes that he went through a gradual process of, I think, 5 or 6 years, if I remember correctly, of contractions leaving his body. So eventually, after that period, he found out every tension, every muscle pain, whatever had left him. So he was just at ease with being in his body.
I mean, they're really dangerous stories, they are, because you hear those and you go, wow, I worked for him. I mean, really, that's all this, we are as seekers. That's all self is as a seeker. It's looking for a way out. I'm desperate to escape, but really, and the desperation can intensify, and you become more and more the seeking becomes more and more intense. And the last thing a seeker ever wants to hear is that there is no escape. That's my hope. That's what I seem to live for, this possibility of escape. And so I love to hear that. I hate it because I'm terribly envious of those who have been alleviated. And quite a lot of my friends are very envious of me. You lucky bastard. I've been going to Tony Parsons 20 years. You only went for 10. You don't deserve it. And the wonder is, of course, there is no deserving. This is completely undeserved. And that feels like love. I mean, in a very, not loving, no justice. The world is not just. Life is not just. There is no justice. That is massively liberating. because self is a righteous bastard. Is she not? Wants to be right, wants to believe that essentially there is an essential morality and righteousness and justice.
There was a French woman who went from one room in an apartment to another, and passing through the door, everything fell away and it never returned. It's quite interesting to listen to. And a while ago after that, her son died in a car accident, and she was describing that not even then did her pain come back. It was so all right. She's at complete peace, and it was just going from one room to the other.
Yeah. Sort of feel sorry for him in a way. There's nothing more beautiful than mourning the loss of someone you love.
She was still very, very okay.
Yeah. Well, there is. I thought you meant that there was no sense of grief or.
The idea, Tim, that there isn't actually frankly justice is a real bugger.
I know it is.
Because you sort of feel like, in the end, I mean, well, so many systems of thought are based on the fact that, okay, if we don't have it now, eventually justice will be.
Yeah.
But I suppose really, the fact that there isn't justice as we conceive it, I mean, another name for that, curiously enough, is unconditional.
Yeah.
Because of course, if it's justice as you conceive it, that would create the condition.
That is the condition. I am is the condition. From the point of view of self, everything is conditional. It's all relational. It's always in relation to me and what I believe, what I feel. It cannot be. And this isn't, I'm not speaking of the end of that, because that is natural, for each character, each human being to have those thoughts, but it can be obvious that they're just thoughts and they don't mean anything. My ideas of justice, my ideas of right and wrong, of good and evil, are just that.
I think they probably have their origin in the physical world, where to a reaction there's a reaction, and in the same way we feel our life is an action in one sense, and then the natural thing is to find some balance, and that balance is what we call justice. So it is part of the natural reality for us.
Yeah, it's not that appearances change in any way. And the judgments still happen in exactly the same way. This is all paradoxical in a way that makes it nonsense. In a real sense, the whole of non-duality is nonsense. By that I mean it can't be made sense of. I haven't made sense of what I'm speaking about. I don't understand what I'm speaking about or what's being spoken. And of course, that's what I was waiting for. I was waiting till I had a full understanding. And then what seemed to happen was I felt I had a full understanding, and it was so downright obvious that it was completely useless. There's no understanding required. Just stories of now I understand it, or now I don't, that's all. Just that.
Question about the body thing again.
The what?
The body thing.
Yes,
again.
yeah.
I'm just trying to formulate a question. You said earlier about not having a sense of the body, if I remember clearly.
No, I mean...
Or in a personal sense, you mean? Like an ownership of?
The thing is, I don't have any sense that it's any different at all than when I felt it was my body. Bodily sensations, the way body feels, which is all we have, That's all there is. It's just entirely natural in a very. It's unquestionable. I don't question. There's no longer questioning. I think that's what's absent, or seemingly doesn't happen. I don't know. You can't really. That's indescribable. But in a very ordinary, it's nothing. It's nothing. It's the same with all experience. So people want to ask, I get asked a lot, so how is life different? So bodily life or relational life, exactly the same. And of course, that is not what you're waiting for. That's not what I was waiting for. I'm waiting for something dramatically, wonderfully different. And I simply don't know, so you ask me, I don't know. And really all the death is the death of the illusion that I do know. So I do know what's going on in my body. I do know what's happening to my body. And then I do extend that. I do know what's happening in the immediate environment. And I do know what's happening in Kenya and Guatemala. It's the same fantasy. The fantasy that I know what's happening in my body is no more of a fantasy than I know what's happening in Eritrea today, right now. It's all imagined. The sensations aren't. The knowing, that's the illusion. I am is the illusion of knowing. I know what the fuck is going on. It just can be smash in your face obvious that you're making that shit up. You always were, and everyone else is. And then it's really, you no longer want to correct yourself to get it right, to really know, and you no longer want to correct anyone else in their own interpretation, illusion of knowing, illusion of understanding. It's absolutely natural for all human beings. They're not doing that. It's all innocent. That's really one of the reasons you can speak of this as love is the innocence of everything, the innocence of all human beings. Because of course we can see that a tree is innocent. We don't question that. We can see that a baby is innocent. But by the time they're 2.5, then they need managing and controlling. They're no longer innocent because they know their name and they're a self like me. And then they're responsible. So the death of responsibility is the obviousness of innocence. Everything is let off. Everyone is let off the hook, freely swimming.
And still correcting people and helping people is happening.
Yeah. Yeah, naturally.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Or not.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was thinking, what is it like for you, sitting there, being no one, so to speak, looking at 15, 20 people that all think that they're kind of characters in a play and think that they're real? It must be hilarious, isn't it? I mean, to no.
No, it's not really. I don't know. How is it? One of the great myths is, so once you've gone, once I've gone, then I will know whether others are there or gone. What a crock of shit. I mean, that's a real dangling carrot, isn't it? Because wouldn't it be nice to know, or how far along the path towards, how much of self is left? You know, because you've all been trying to get rid of your fucking self. And I can tell just by looking at each one of you, the amount of self still nearly, you know. Now, I thought she'd gone, but then she spoke. Then she spoke. Oh, it was fucking obvious that me's still there. It's all nonsense. This is not about the death of self, although in the story that's how it can appear. There is no self. That's full stop. That's it. There's no. You are the delusion to yourself that you see others and know others, because you know yourself. You do not know yourself. There's fuck all to know. There, and if that is obvious, that's the most obvious. And in that, there are no others. So I do not see other selves sitting in front of me. Full stop. I see, yeah. I mean, it is a relief, but it's also dreadful, because I spoke about this yesterday, because my longing was to be seen and to be known by others. That's what I wanted above all. That was the connection that I was looking for. As me, it was so lonely, so isolated, so disconnected. This longing to connect is this energy of, and the one, I mean, just the wonderfully dreadful news is that there is no connection. There's no possibility of it. And the death of that possibility is the liberation from that longing to be at one with another. Whether you make that another human being, a dog, a horse, or God, it's all the same. It's just all the same. I'm incomplete. I'm looking for completion. Please fucking help me. Find it. Give me it. Make me whole. Well, the only wholeness is complete emptiness. That's the wholeness. The wholeness is nothing. It's dreadful. It's dreadfully wonderful. There aren't separate things. The wholeness is completely empty. All of this. And by empty is just pointing to it can't be said, can't be known. And the freedom and the peace is in that impossibility of knowing. When I always long to know. No more questions. No questions. Unquestionable. There isn't a no self that you might become. You know. So most selves are on the seeking is for a better self. That's the normal quest. Then, for whatever reason, our discontent with ourselves, or there is another way of seeking, which is the absence of myself, or the death of myself. I read of it and I was sick of myself, so it seemed a good idea. And then the wonder is there is nothing to lose. I never was. And that sounds dreadful, but nothing ever was, so it's incredibly fine. It's not that, I've been meted out for any special treatment in that my life never was. Nothing ever was at all. So you can't look to history to find stories of possible enlightenment or liberation. There aren't any special ones anymore. And that can feel a terrible loss to me, because above all I want it to be special. And then the irony of me sitting in front of you lot with a camera, appearing to be special, that's not lost either. That's quite funny. So that's funny. That's the funny bit. Not that I'm here as a no-self speaking to selves. Because that's nonsense.